Hey there, before we get into the episode, I want to share with you something that I have coming up that is going to help you enjoy the wedding day. I don't mean to be dramatic, but one of the most important components to a successful wedding day is having a realistic timeline in place. You've probably been to a wedding, or maybe even been in the wedding party, on a day where everything was running behind from the very beginning. Or worse yet, you got up at 5 a.m. for hair and makeup just to sit around for hours waiting for everything to get started. So many wedding nightmares are all based around a failed timeline. So it's no surprise that couples struggle with creating this timeline. It can feel so daunting and overwhelming that it's just easier to put it off. How are you supposed to know where to even begin anyway? You've never done this before. Well, don't worry because I have over 400 weddings under my belt and I know how to create that oh so perfect balance in your timeline so that you're not missing out on any important moments because you were so rushed. On April 2nd, I'm hosting a free workshop to create your wedding day timeline, and I would love for you to join. We'll start with going over the main questions that you need to answer before creating your timeline, and then I'll walk you through the exact timeline process that I've perfected over the last 20 years. I'll also be able to answer your specific questions live so we can discuss any unique details for your timeline and answer any questions you might have. It's all happening on Zoom at 6 p.m. on April 2nd, and I hope you can make it. We can even review your existing timeline for any updates or changes that I might recommend. You can register for free at planningcollective.com/timeline. Now, let's get back to the show. Hi there, I'm Kate McClellan, and I've been a professional wedding planner for 20 years now. I started Planning Collective when I noticed that though most couples are super excited about being engaged, they quickly feel overwhelmed and intimidated by the actual process of planning a wedding. If left unchecked, this can lead to massive burnout and the urge to scrap all your plans and just elope. While this is totally normal, you don't have to sacrifice your sanity for your dream wedding. In the Planning Collective podcast, I'm going to share the processes, tips, and tools that engaged couples like you need to feel confident, supported, and excited about your wedding plans again. Let's get started. Hey guys, Kate here. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Planning Collective podcast. Today, I want to get into a bit more detail about a mistake that I'm seeing many couples make, even when they have the proper information. I thought it would be perfect timing to explain why it's a mistake and hopefully save you from some last minute stress in the weeks before your wedding. I'm referring to a reel that I posted on Instagram. Hopefully, you've had a chance to see it. If not, make sure to follow me over at Planning Collectively. Don't forget that LY at the end. And you'll see where I've been sharing some screenshots of wedding planning questions being asked, and I'm giving my answers based on 20 years of experience in the wedding industry. One of the most common questions I see asked is about when to send out your save the dates and invitations. And without fail, there are always comments that people are sending them earlier than recommended. And I totally understand why. As a wedding planner, we want to have all things accounted for, and there are so many things that are connected to the number of guests attending. So why wouldn't you want that information as early as possible? Well, I'm going to share with you another post that I saw that outlines the exact reason why that can backfire on you in just a minute. But first, I want to review that important timeline for sending out your save the dates and invitations. I want to start by saying that this is the common time frame for most couples getting married in the States, though I have heard that in the UK and other countries, their timelines are a bit different. So check with your catering vendor about when they need the final counts by, and then you can apply the rest of what we're going to go over now to that timing. Let's break down how to get your invite sending timeline. I have a couple of graphics to help walk you through what we're going to go over now. You can grab them over at planningcollective.com, and I'll make sure to share them on Instagram as well. As I mentioned, it's all based on when your vendors need the final counts by, meaning when you have to tell your caterer, venue, florist, etc., how many guests, meals, centerpieces, chairs, and other count-based items you're going to need for the wedding day. Here in the States, these are typically due to the vendors 10 to 14 days before the wedding. So that's where we're going to start. And if you're just hearing this for the first time, that might sound crazy close to the wedding day. Just 2 weeks out, that can't be right. Well, for reasons we'll get to in a minute, your vendors are very used to last minute counts, and they can help you in the earlier stages to make your best guess at how many guests you'll have. That was almost a tongue twister. Depending on their services, they will have a policy on how much over or under you can be from that number without penalty. So you do want to try to be somewhat accurate. Like I mentioned, your vendors are familiar with getting the counts late in the planning process. However, they do need to either hold inventory, like their chairs and linens for you, or forecast their staffing for the day. And as long as you're letting them know the number of guests you're inviting, they can help you predict from there. If your guest count goes dramatically up or down after booking, simply keep them updated with the changes so they can update your order. Okay, I'm getting all kinds of sidetracked here with other information to share with you, but let's get back to that timeline. So, 10 to 14 days before the wedding is when you'll need the final counts for your vendors. And it's just about a guarantee that you'll have some follow up to do with guests that forget to RSVP. It always happens, so give yourself a week or two between the RSVP due date and when your vendors need the final counts by so that you have that time to follow up with the guests. That means your RSVP due date should be about 3 to 4 weeks before the wedding. Now, in order to make sure that the guests have enough time with the invite before the RSVPs are due, but not too much time that they're forgotten about, we're going to add 4 to 6 weeks to the RSVP due date, and that's when you want to mail your invites out, which ends up being about 6 to 8 weeks before the wedding date. Again, if you're just hearing this information for the first time, you're probably thinking something like, that sounds great, but I'm still going to send out my invite 6 months before the wedding. We can put the RSVP due date like 5 months before. Let me tell you why that can actually make the weeks before your wedding much more stressful. I want to read a post from a reel that I shared a week or so ago, and the bride asks, has anyone been in a similar situation to me? Everyone responded to RSVPs promptly, and then literally 1 to 2 weeks before the wedding, I have 5 people drop out and the wedding is in a week's time. I feel like it's really upsetting as it costs per person, and I feel like what else is going to happen next? All my seating charts are printed too. Now, to be clear, this is not one of my clients, and I don't know when this bride sent out the invites and asked for the RSVPs due by. However, she mentions changes coming in 2 weeks before the wedding, as well as having everything already printed, which makes me believe that she made the super common mistake of thinking that it can't hurt to bump up the timing that we just discussed. If you mail your invites with the RSVP date too early, guests may have the best of intentions to attend the wedding, but leaving too much time in between increases the chances that their plans may change. And again, for the most part, it's not done intentionally, but work schedules change, kids' events pop up, or other unanticipated conflicts can come up. And while there's always going to be a risk of last minute changes because of people getting sick, etc., the closer to the wedding date you have the RSVPs due, the more accurate your counts are going to be. And the closer to the RSVP due dates that you send the invites, the better the guests can realistically anticipate their schedules. So, in order to avoid the last minute scramble of having things reprinted or paying for meals for guests that aren't able to make it, I highly recommend that you stick to the timeline of mailing the invites and RSVPs that we just went over. The RSVP due date, again, 3 to 4 weeks before the wedding, and the invites mailed out 6 to 8 weeks before the wedding. Are you feeling like this might be a little too late? Well, that's the exact reason why save the dates were invented. This allows you to give the guests a heads up about the wedding date so they can begin making plans, but they're not required to give you a solid answer until the date gets closer. If a guest receives a save the date and they know they're not able to make it, they'll likely reach out to you to let you know that they're not going to be able to make it, so you can get a general idea of the count a bit earlier than when you send out the invitations. On a side note, it's still suggested that you send everyone that receives a save the date the wedding invitation, even if they've already told you that they're not able to make it. Just as plans change, preventing guests from able to make it, the opposite could happen, and you don't want them to feel like they've been cut from the list. Even if you know 100% they are not able to make it, it's still nice for them to receive the invite so they can feel included in the celebration, and that way they'll also have your registry information. The recommended time frame for save the dates to be sent out is about 6 to 12 months before the wedding, and you can include your link to your wedding website so they can follow along with any updates in the time between the save the dates and the invitations. Okay, so hopefully I've been able to convince you to hold off on sending out your invites until you can get closer to that 6 to 8 week mark. But if you have questions or if you think that there are exceptions in your case that might make a valid reason to adjust your timeline, I would love to hear it. Head over to the Wedding Planning Collective Facebook group and let me know there. Or, better yet, you can join me for our weekly Planning Collective office hours where we can talk through your actual wedding plan questions and I can give you my professional answers. You can find more information on that at planningcollective.com/membership. And if you found this episode helpful, I would love it if you could take a quick second to rate and review on the platform you're listening on. It would mean the world to me and it will help other couples find the wedding planning tips they need. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next episode.